Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Love Amplified. Great for you to join us. We got a special one for you today. I am connecting with my friend, colleague, and coachee, if you want to call it that, Vivashan. And we're going to have a little chat about where he is, and he's coming up to a very significant anniversary, and that anniversary is it's almost 5 years since he completed our OSW workshop. Vivashan, hi, how you doing?
Hey Riyadh, I'm good, and you?
I'm awesome, thank you. Thank you for agreeing to do this first experimental connection on Love Amplified. It is experimental for now, but let's see if we can get some substance in this. And it's been 5 years since you completed your Discover Your Optimal State workshop with us. I know it's been a hell of a ride for you, and that's an understatement. But I'll leave you to tell me more about that. But the first thing I want to ask you is, how did you come to it in the first place? How did you get to do the OSW workshop, and what attracted you to it to begin with?
So it's. I was gonna say everything that we do is experimental anyway, so this video is no exception. The way I got to it, the way I got to OSW was very unexpected. So as you might remember, when I got a promotion at work, they called you in to coach me because I had no people skills. Uh, I was had difficulty connecting with people, so they called you in to have a chat with me. And I think we were on our second session, and the second coaching session we had was very different to the first coaching session. The first one I did most talking, and I told you what my goals were and what I wanted to achieve and how I was going to measure my progress and how I wanted you to measure my progress. And I took down notes when you were speaking. And in the second session, we had a conversation like two humans, and and I think I got a lot deeper in that conversation and started to figure out that there was more going on under the surface than what I initially realized. And at the end of that session, you said, it was a Tuesday afternoon, you said, we run this workshop uh, called Discover Your Optimal State, and it's this weekend starting on Friday. I think you should come. It's going to be very difficult for you, but I think you'll get a lot of value out of it if you do it. So I asked you what it's about and why should I attend it and stuff like that, and you didn't answer me. You said just come and try and see what it's about and just commit, just give yourself to it. So I did show up on Friday, and didn't know what to expect, like most people. But by the time I left on Sunday, uh, yeah, my life was never be the same again. Really doesn't do it justice. But yeah, it was a whole other experience after that.
Okay, so we tell people at the end of an OSW workshop that this is just the beginning. It's kind of open the door, and you got to step through it. And for different people, it's going to be a different ride. For some people, it's sometimes business as usual. For some people, it's an up and down affair. For some people, they just stall for a period of time and then kind of find their footing and then ground themselves. What was it like for you initially after OSW?
It's a very overwhelming experience. You touch parts of yourself that you buried for a long time, so they're dormant in you for a long time, and probably you never even knew were there, or you don't remember the last time you remembered were there. So when you get that new level of freedom within yourself, suddenly the world becomes not such a dangerous place anymore, and you just want to get out there and do things,
Mm.
drastic things. And it's good that the advice you get when you're done with the OSW is, if it's true for you now, it'll be true for you later. So don't make any drastic moves. And so I remember the first day after OSW, we had another coaching session, and I told you I'm leaving work. I'm going to resign, and that was in 2015. And because I just felt like there was no way I could fail. The way I was feeling at that point, I felt like I don't want to lose this. I don't want to miss out on using all this energy, because I don't think I ever remember having that much energy myself before. So it is very much uh, getting in touch with, I think, what we really are at the core, who we really are at the core. And that's such an unlimited source of potential and possibility that you just you want to start moving. It's like you put a switch on and suddenly you get a huge power surge. So you just want to get active and busy and start doing things. So for me, it was very much that, but I had 2 years to marinate on before I did eventually leave work and resign. Uh, but that's because I kept going back to OSW, and that's something we might talk about later on in the conversation. But the workshop is a first look. It's a first peek into what's possible. It definitely is just an opening of a door, because, like since then, I've had many friends and family go on to the workshop and refer lots of people, and everybody's had a different journey. Not one person that I've referred has said they got nothing out of it, that they got absolutely no value out of it. No one said that. But everybody's journey afterwards has been slightly different, and certainly mine has been different. So I think that it also keeps coming back to, once you come through the workshop and you have a sense of responsibility, and you know that you're taking matters into your own hands. I think each of us, to a different degree, start to take matters into our own hands, and what we do with that power is different.
So I read a post of yours today on Facebook, and it was a memory from 6 years ago, from pre-OSW. And you speak about not wanting to carry on working for enriching the coffers of a corporate or some other person, and wanting to maybe do something on your own. And we've discussed this on many occasions, post your OSW and in our coaching subsequently. So the idea was obviously there before you did OSW. Okay? Why? Why do you feel that?
I believe that we all want to feel purposeful. We all want to contribute. We all want to be part of something that's bigger than ourselves, at different levels and in varying degrees. But for me specifically, my whole life, I known that there has to be. It was a subtle feeling that there has to be more than what I see everybody else around me just doing, because I found it the weirdest thing that it was very rare to actually see someone that was genuinely happy. Like just to come across a person that's so content and stable within themselves and just secure. It was very difficult to see. Definitely in the place that I grew up in and community that I grew up in, I never came across anyone like that. I read about people like that, or people like that on TV, but I never met anyone like that. And by the time I left on Sunday after my OSW, I had met another person like that, and I saw myself become a person like that in those 2.5 days. So that galvanized the feeling that was in me even before OSW, that there has to be more. There has to be. I'm spending my life working so hard. I studied so hard. I did all these things just to make somebody else rich that I'm never going to meet. And that just struck me one day. That's why I wrote that post on Facebook. I had a particularly hard day, and we had to make some cuts. We had to cut some jobs because shareholder value was going down, and we needed to turn the company around and things like that. It
Mm.
just made no sense to me that these people that we never even met and probably never will meet have such huge control over our lives. They're so far removed from our reality and what we're going through. And there surely has to be a world where there's a better way to do it than that, where the people that we work with and the people that are such an intimate part of our lives are people that we connect with and people that we know and can put a face to and have a real relationship with, not just a paper relationship. So yeah, I think for me, it was always about looking for more depth, looking for more connection, love in everything that I do and experience.
Mhm. So after you left your corporate job, um, 2 years after you completed OSW, it's not been plain sailing for you. It's been incredibly difficult for you. Okay. What have you learned, firstly, from your journey this 5 years, including this incredibly difficult period? And you're still in it on some level or another. And what has been your learning for yourself? And how has what you've learned aided you, supported you in going through what you've gone through?
Leaving work was at the time a liberating experience. It was something that I never thought I'd be capable of doing. And it was probably the first time in my life that I was living life on my own terms. I was making the decision for anyone else. I didn't consult with anyone. I didn't take anyone's advice. I said I'm doing this, and I did it. And that act created a fearlessness in me that I've carried through since then. Because even though things went south afterwards, I realized that I survived that, and that means I can survive pretty much anything. It just gave me a new sense of resilience and the ability to realize that I can find what I need when I need it. But having said that, it there were times when it became incredibly difficult afterwards from a practical point of view. I think that's by design. Like that was all that was pointing me towards something that I still hadn't learned yet. And it actually just clicked for me on Saturday when you and I were having another coaching session. It took 5 years from doing OSW when it was a big revelation having finished OSW and realizing that I'm so much more than what I think I am. 5 years later, getting to a place of doing the work all the time, having the conversations all the time, not stopping the process. So it didn't stop at OSW. Continue working, and leaving work was part of that. And getting to a place where on Saturday I realized, I'm enough. I am enough as I am. There's nothing that I need to do to be more. There's nothing that I need to prove to myself or to anyone. And that was massive. And I think all the difficulty of the last 2 or 3 years since having left work has been about moving towards that lesson, because I still didn't understand it, and I knew it cognitively, because we spoke many times and intellectually it made sense to me. But the feeling of it, the experience of it, it needed all this uh, trauma and maybe suffering to drive the point home. Where now I feel like it doesn't matter what happens next. I'll be okay, because as I am, I'm enough. And as I sit here in front of you today, um, I can be loved. I am loved. I'm lovable. I don't need anything to complete that picture. And that was a really big revelation. So that's probably the most important lesson that started at OSW and came full circle after 5 years of having finished OSW, this last conversation on Saturday, it also reminded me why it's so important to keep the relationships, to keep the conversations, to invest in the conversations and the relationships, even after doing something like OSW. Because a lot of people, again, friends and family, they do the workshop and then they think that everything's over, they've been solved, their problem's been solved, they don't have to do this kind of stuff again. It fixed everything. But experience has shown me that you have to continuously go back and look at, well, what really happened that weekend. What I mean, all of us come out on the Sunday and we're like, what the fuck was that? You don't really know. You don't really know what happened to you. How did you? Why do you feel this amazing? Like, what really happened? But so it doesn't stop there. You have to keep going back and asking yourself, why was that so big? What happened there? How do I take it further? How do I make it bigger? Which is what I've been doing for the last couple of years, and you can probably attest to that. So it never stops. That was a lesson for me in all this. That the learning never stops. But I know that might sound onerous to some people, because we're so goal orientated and we feel like there has to be a point. At some point, it has to stop. You have to have achieved it. You have to get a badge. You have to get the certificate, and it has to stop because you have to move on. But it doesn't. It's an infinite game, as you like to say. You stay in it because it's fun to play. And you just keep playing it to keep playing it.
So you kind of speak to a very, very important thing. So many of us get on this journey and we think there's an end goal. We think that when we reach some point, that's the end of our sense of self-awareness or self-discovery, and it's never that. Even if you attain enlightenment, it doesn't end there, because there's something beyond it. There always is. And it's a vital lesson for us to keep reaching for more, keep going deeper inward, to know more about ourselves. And I think your journey to a large degree has been that. And you've allowed yourself to be supported. You've allowed yourself to be vulnerable. Um, you've had some incredibly difficult moments. And all along the way, you've been open to learning more. So, where to from here for you now? You've had these realizations, okay? You've had what I'm going to call an incubation period after OSW, okay? You've been reflecting, exploring, doing a lot of inner work, and going through a lot of turmoil, but you seem to be almost at the end of that. I sense that there's something different about you now. I sense that you've had and you've already spoken to some realization. And what now? What do you do with all of this?
So I have a book called The Daily Stoic, and it's 365. It's a day book. So you pick it up, and for that day you read a quote. And this morning's one was from Marcus Aurelius, and he was quoting Plato. He said, "Take the bird's eye from things." And I had a profound realization, because I've been feeling so expansive since that conversation on Saturday, um, that I just been enjoying staying in space, because it was a pretty big realization. But the thing about taking the bird's eye view is, when you encounter something, when you're in the middle of something, it looks very big when it's in front of you, because we get wrapped up in it. We create a story about it. But if you just zoomed up one level, say from the level of looking at the country, from the sky, and we all know that experience now. It's not just imagined anymore. Most of us have been in a plane, been high up above the ground to know what it looks like. If you look at your problem or your situation from that height, it's almost inconsequential. And then as you go out even further, say you go on a rocket ship and you start to look at the Earth, it's even smaller and even more insignificant. And that's not to make it small. That's just to say, um, if you put it in perspective, suddenly more options become available. So the way I feel now, I feel like I've zoomed out and I do have a certain perspective, but I have to zoom out even more because there's a bigger experience that I need to have. Because I'm still invested in some of my fears. Like I still, I think we spoke briefly about when you make a choice, you want immediate returns. You want things to turn on tomorrow. And I'm still like, just this morning it clicked for me that the negative outcomes have the same probability as a positive outcome. But we tend to look at the negative outcome as being more of a definite, more of a given for some strange reason.
Why do we do that?
So probably just a hard one to survive. Like you just, you have to look for danger all the time. But I was chatting with another friend of ours now, just before this conversation, and I was telling her it's so simple for an animal because an animal is alert to danger, but they don't spend the whole day thinking about a lion. They eat, and when the lion comes, then literally breathe down their neck. Then there's probably, okay, now's a good time to thinking about a lion. But we go to bed thinking about the lion, we wake up thinking about the lion, spend the whole day thinking about the lion. And as much as we have that ability to predict, we also have the ability to stop that thinking, which we don't use. Uh, I think we just like hitting ourselves.
Yeah. And I think using that animal analogy, when the lion is breathing down their neck and they have to do something, they do something. And if they do escape the lion, they shake it off very, very quickly. And they don't carry the impact or the memory of the lion, like you say, around with them for the rest of their lives. They move on.
Yeah. They don't have to say a mantra after that to forgive the lion for what the lion did to them and stuff.
Or forgive themselves for waiting until the lion was breathing down their neck.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's where I am. I know I have to commit to something now, but the difference now is that even if I fail, even if it doesn't succeed tomorrow, it's fine. I still have that experience of enoughness. It doesn't take anything away from who I am or what I'm here to do. So all I can do now, what I can do now is actually just have fun with it, just play with it, see what happens,
Yeah.
which is exciting.
So this idea of enoughness is something that everybody struggles with. Everybody on some level or another, or at some point in their lives, feels unworthy, feels of no value. Um, and it is something that happens very early on. It is something that gets triggered in our childhood. And it's something that we probably carry for the rest of our lives on some level or another. And I think it's important for people to understand that it is a journey to arrive at a place of being okay with yourself, to being enough. Like you say, it it may happen overnight because for some people it can. There's a sudden revelation and they wake up the next day and they just know that they are enough. But there's a lot of work that has probably happened before then. But
Yeah, I
would
think
you,
also it's important what you're saying, having the realization of it. You can't be told this, you can't be taught this, um, because during the workshop you do hear it, a lot that you are, not that that's the point, but you do hear it, yeah, especially it'll come up in the sharing or it'll come up in some way or the other, but you hear it. And typically the people that you meet afterwards have done a lot of work before that, So you start to get into those circles where people have these kind of conversations, and they'll tell you, they'll tell you that they're enough. They probably got a certificate that says that they're enough because they did some course or something or the other. But it's not something that's academic, something that can be taught. You really have to arrive at the experience of it, and the way to do that is by continuously doing the work and going deeper into yourself and being vulnerable and sharing and letting people who can hold space for you support you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You see, I also think that it's a process of arriving at a place of not being enough. Okay,
Yeah.
I think we arrive here on the planet being completely enough, and then there's a slow eroding of that. There's a slow dissolution of that enoughness, and it happens over a period of time. And gaining it, getting back to it, reconnecting is a process of regaining that, of undoing the conditioning, because everything about life from a very early age tells us that we're not enough. And it becomes so ingrained, so we become so entrained into it that that's who we think we are. And it is a process of regaining that original knowledge, if you want to call it, of our own enoughness. And you're right, it's not a cognitive thing. It is something that happens on a deep bodily, emotional, mental level. And that is a spiritual experience in itself.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it's a slippery fellow also, because I had this, the experience was so big on Saturday, like I told you. But shortly afterwards, yesterday sometime, I had to plan a birthday party, and just one or two things were out of my control, because it became a conversation about something else, and the whole spirit of the party was lost and became about the logistics of it. And suddenly I was just like that, back into, it's my fault, I'm gonna I can't take responsibility for this, and it's all gonna go to hell in a handbasket now because my, and but the feeling overrid the thought this time. It wasn't, I had to bring awareness to the fact that I'm enough and remind myself. It was, the feeling just bubbled up because now it was there. So the feeling came up this time, and it was like, hang on, it stopped everything. It created space between what my thoughts were doing and everything else, and just allowed me to settle in back into that feeling of enoughness. So that was different. That was not me trying to bring awareness or shine a light onto what was going on. It was actually coming now from something that was within, and saying, no, just get some perspective here, dude. It's, you lost the plot a little bit,
Yeah.
and then the awareness came, but it was more the feeling.
Yeah. So even in the realization of your own enoughness, you're going to be tested on that, as we all are. Life is going to happen, and it's going to throw you a curveball, and suddenly you're going to feel that remnants of your old not being enough come up. And in that moment, you need to be very awake and aware to do what you did in terms of bringing yourself back, reminding yourself. And I think that's what it's got to be. It's a constant process of reminding yourself of who you are, of your enoughness. And you need those reminders in the moments when you are thrown out of it. And that is why it is useful when you have support around you, people who know you as enough and who keep affirming that for you. Because
Yeah,
the rest of the people in society out there don't do that. They pull you down, they tear you apart. All you have to do is go onto social media and you see how people are triggered and how they react from their own not enoughness. And in that, they try and bring everybody down to that particular level. And it's a bloodbath out there sometimes.
yeah. You reminded me of something so important. One of the things that, if we want to sustain the feeling that we have after we do the workshop, or when we've been through a massive transformation, is created for others. You speak about this a lot as well, and you say what you want to experience, what you want you give away, what you want for yourself you create for another. And what it really means is it's very difficult for you to see your own enoughness, but it's easy for you to see someone else that you love and care about, to see their enoughness. And one of the best ways we can sustain this is to, and keep creating it for ourselves, is to remind others of their enoughness. I've experienced this myself, because I think it was in one of Neil Donald Walsh's books where he says it's not that you need that affirmation from somebody else, for somebody else to tell you that you're enough. Somebody else can hold space for your enoughness. They create a container for your enoughness to show up there, and for you to be able to look at when they tell you that you are enough. So they're not giving you affirmation. They're just reflecting back what is already there, but sometimes difficult for you to see. So the best way is give it to someone else. Tell someone else how they're enough, and especially the times that we're going through now with everything that's going on. Those of us who have some level of awareness, and can recognize that it's not conducive living the way we're living. I think that it's well within our power and our responsibility to bring that into the world, to start telling people that they're enough, telling the people around us, just loving the people around us with enoughness. We can, a little bit of that can go a long way.
So you've kind of already answered my final question in that, but I wanted to just ask you to, if there was a message that you want to give, especially in these times that we're in right now, if there was something that you wanted people to hear, what would that be over and above what you just said? Or you can say it again.
Be love, just be love. And I know that sounds fluffy, but at the heart of it, that's just, it's what we here to do. Um, there's no more that we need to be. There's nothing more that we need to prove. And I think the world shutting down for the last almost 3 months proved to us that there are things more important than the economy and our careers and all the things that we place so much value on, and those essential things. And it's so funny because that term came into such common parlance over the last couple of months. The essential things are still what they've been for thousands of years, and that's human connection, the food that we eat, the stuff that the basic building blocks of life. And I think it was a good experience to go back to that and be reminded of what matters the most. You know, after 3 months, I got the opportunity to hug someone, and you, I thought that I was okay without that. Like, I really thought I can love someone from far. It's fine. I have the ability to connect with them energetically and all these things. But when I hug someone, that connection, when it came flooding back, I remembered that this is something we can't live without. This is something that is essential. So my message would just be love, and just keep giving to others what you want for yourself. That's the best way to be.
So I think to bring it full circle, when I met you the first time, you were an engineer. You were clinical. You were disconnected. And I'm generalizing here, but you were um, you were caught up in your head because it's where you lived your life most of the time, and you were disconnected from your heart on some level or another. And to hear you talk about what you're talking about right now, and to hear you express it in the manner that you do, with not your intellect, but with your heart, is really very warming to me to see how much you've connected and how much you've developed and how much you've grown as a more whole human being rather than just a clever person, which is what you've always been. But there's so much more to you right now. And I look forward to see where you're going to take all of this.
Me too. You just did exactly what my message was. You did that for me and created that space for me. So yeah, now it's my turn to flower. We'll see what happens.
Fash, thank you so much for chatting with me.